us today for our fourth Sochology session. My name is Mudassir Bungash, and we also have Amna Nazir with us today from the Product Soch team. Today's session topic is finding product market fit, and we're absolutely thrilled to have Shyvee with us today. Shyvee is a product manager at LinkedIn, an instructor at LinkedIn Learning, and host of the Product Management Learning Series. She firmly believes in the power of mentorship and coaching and has spent the better part of the last decade helping hundreds of high achieving individuals make progress in their careers and find meaning in their work. Shyvee is a speaker and a coach. She has taught workshops and spoken at leading universities such as Harvard, Columbia, Northwestern, and Fortune 1000 companies like LinkedIn, of course, Deloitte, Cloudflare. She's also a prolific content creator on LinkedIn, where she shares product management and career tips daily since September 2021. In the past year, she's built an engaged global following of 60,000 plus followers, and her content has had over 15 million views. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. So for our participants, please keep your mics off during the session and type all your questions into the chat, and we'll bring them up during or at the end of the session. Shyvee, we're excited and honored to have you join us and really look forward to your insights. So over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Can you guys all see the screen?
Yeah, we can see your video.
Awesome.
And yeah, we can just see you sharing right now. So that's great.
Awesome. Perfect. Also, first of all, I'm still, I guess, recovering a little bit from COVID. So I might be coughing a little and my voice might sound a little off from time to time. I'm going to have my water with me. So I apologize for that. But I'm really excited for today's talk about a very, very important topic near and dear to many, many product managers' heart, especially those who are working on early stage products or even later stage. You need to continue to, find your product market fit. Mark Andrews, the founder of Anderson Horowitz, one of the most successful VC firm, called finding product market fit is the only thing that matters. So that just highlights how important it is at this topic. So what you introduced, my name is Shyvee. I have been working on product for a few years and have had the pleasure to, observe some of the best practice firsthand. Also through my content creation as well as, working at LinkedIn. I'd like to know, maybe folks drop in the chat where you are watching us from and what you are hoping to learn the most today. I will revisit them from time to time to make sure that, we're touching upon the most important topics that are most relevant for our audience. Now, moving on, as folks are typing, the agenda that I have for today are three to four big areas. The first thing is understanding what exactly is product market fit, right? Making sure we level set and have a shared common understanding. The second thing is, what do we need to do in order to find product market fit? What are some frameworks, some best practice questions to ask, to think through as we are trying to figure out how to get to define and how to get to product market fit? The third aspect I want to touch upon is, now that you have done your groundwork, how do you then translate that actually into a winning MVP such that you can, discover and maximize your chance of finding product market fit? And last but not least, I like to end with, how do you know you have found it? What are some signals and what are some best practice to go from here? Okay, I have one question. Hasha, thanks for joining. You look familiar. I know you follow my content. How do you define product market fit? Okay, next slide. I really like this definition from Lanny, who writes a lot about product. I follow his newsletter and his latest podcast. So I like the balance between all three elements of when it comes to finding true product market fit. I think the first is, a lot of people focus on the first circle, which is, did you make a product that people want? Like, are you solving the right problem? We'll talk about it in a little bit of frameworks to identifying that. But I think it's also really important. The second circle, which sometimes get, forgotten or not paying as much attention, is that is your product good enough that people will be able to find you and remember you, that they come back and use it every time that the needs arise, right? So how top of mind are you? Or are you building a leaky buckets that people come once, check it out, have novelty effects, and then leave your product? And then last but not least is you yourself as a business. Can you make a profit delivering the product at scale? So all three elements have to be working in sync. And your true product market fit is obviously the overlap of all three. How do we know if we're losing product market fit once we have it? We'll touch upon some of that in a moment. So one thing I'd like to clarify is that a lot of people think of product market fit as something binary, right? Yes or no. You either achieve it or you don't. It's like this big bang event. But actually, building product market fit is about increasing your confidence in, driving that you feel like you're heading towards the right trajectory, and continue checking in and making sure you don't lose it. Right? What Harsha was asking. So it takes time. Actually, about half of the companies do not find immediate product market fit right after launch. Right. So in one of Lanny's newsletter, he actually did a research around some of the well-known, startups, and see how long it took them to find product market fit. So I would say, product market fit is not like this big bang event. It's almost like, company wanted to go IPO, and it is like this milestone moment, but it is actually a very gradual, continuous process that you continue to build up your confidence in knowing, you're heading on to the right trajectory. Now, what are some tools that we like to use in order to sort of systematically approach how to think about product market fit, right? And increase your conviction. Hey, this is the right process to focus, right product to focus. So at LinkedIn, we like to use this framework. I don't think it actually originated from LinkedIn. It's probably a management framework, I think either from Bain or McKinsey. This talks about a notion of like, if you're a player in the market, where do you want to play? How do you win? And how do you know if you have won? So all three questions are super important. And I want every product manager working on your product to have very clear answer. It doesn't have to be long, like long paragraph, but you need to be able to very succinctly answer all three questions. And you need to quiz your team, especially if you're a founder, to make sure everybody answer it in the same way as you do, so that you make sure you have that alignment. So in the where do you play space, it's about the importance of having a very clear problem statement. And so the question behind that is, you need to know who you're designing for, you're building this product for, what problems you're solving for, and how important is that problem. Later on in the talk, we'll talk a lot about, how do you make sure you're solving the right problem, the meaty problem versus, something that are not so important, or people already very satisfied with their current solution. And then the last piece of this is the notion of, is the notion of why now. You need to have a certain urgency to why you need to solve the problem now. Like, why not wait for a couple of months or a couple of years? What's compelling you to solve it now? What's giving you that urgency? Now, the second piece is, if once you know where you want to play with the clear problem statement, now you need to look internally at you, right? What do you uniquely bring to the table such that you can create a differentiated value than your competitors or other alternatives that people are not using? Why would they choose you? It's almost like you're going for a job interview, right? Like, people will ask you, like, tell me about you, or why you, right? So you need to be very clear on what are some unique value prop that my product can provide that will win. And a lot of times, that I think one mistakes that people tend to fall into, especially early stage startup, is that they target such a wide net of problems and people to solve, like personas to solve, that they tend to tell me they have 20 things they need to build for an MVP. That sounds like a red flag to me. Really, your unique value prop is the one or two killer features that will really help you stand out. So what would that be? And how niche does your problem statement needs to be in order for you to launch it and be successful? Obviously, later you can expand your scope and target it more and grow. And that's how you continue to expand and find adjacent product market fit. But at the initial stage, it's really important to be able to identify that clear statement, problem space that you want to operate in, and then niche in to make sure you deliver a unique value prop. Now, how do we know we won? Those are the success metrics, right? And it depends during which stage of your product. If you're very early on, it's important to validate hypothesis around, do people come to use you? Do they engage with the product? Do they find that aha moment where they realize the value of your product? But as you progress and getting more and more confidence in the product market fit, then you can shift to different other parts of your product stage. Maybe you need to grow more people to use your product. But at the initial stage, you need to make sure people enjoy using your product and do not leave. You're not building a leaky bucket before you talk about growth and other aspect of your product. Now, I want to speed up some of the other slides just so that we can touch upon different parts of the framework. One thing we really like to use, again, folks can research online, is the job to be done framework. So for those who are not familiar with it, a famous case study is this McDonald's milkshake study conducted by Professor Clayton Christensen, from Harvard. But the idea is, hey, when you think of how to improve a milkshake, a lot of times you think of different flavors, different size, right? As a milkshake company, that's how you innovate. But really, the problem that you're trying to solve is to understand who actually drinks milkshake. Is it only kids or someone else? What time of the day do they actually drink milkshake? What we discovered from his study was that about 40% of the sales of milkshake were actually made in the morning by lonely males in their mid-30s, late 40s, who are ordered nothing but only milkshake to be consumed in their cars. What's happening here? Actually, they were commuting between, they were doing heavy duty work, and they were commuting between cities and cities in America. So having more flavors and different sizes might or might not help boost sales. But the problem to be solved here, what they're hiring, the job that this man hiring the milkshake to do, is actually helping them to satisfy hunger, mid-morning hunger during their commute, right? Maybe they wake up super early at 5-6 a.m. They had the breakfast, but now, it's like weird time at 10 a.m. It's not quite lunch yet. They're commuting, they're hungry, and they don't have hands to pick up bananas or bagels or, Snicker bar, like protein bars, right? So a milkshake is actually really handy if it's like, if it feels that's helped them satisfy that hunger. So this is a classic example of like how we typically think about solving problem in a very obvious way, but you actually need to do more research to really understand who the customers are, what problems they're solving, and how you can help them to solve it.
Yeah, Shyvee, so the first time I heard about this case study, I was just blown away, right? Like I would have never thought it was, middle-aged men who are commuting to work and they need that kind of extra boost of energy to get through. So, I mean, you're right on point to bring this framework up. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. I think it's extremely important for people who are at the stage of finding product market fit, because a lot of times you need to not think it from your perspective, right? Like, hey, I have this great solution. Like, how does it fit in? But you really need to tweak your perspective to think about the user, right? Like, what are they hiring your product for? Right? What are they using it for? Why are they using it? So another framework I like to use sometimes is, how do we understand the problem more? There are 4 different places, sort of tools that you can use, right? The first is understanding user behavior. So like the job to be done, that milkshake study is a classic example of understanding why are people using it. So it's really important here that you look at what are some of the, do people hack around duct tape different solution, right? Like for example, Excel, I think Google Sheet is a very good sort of tool sometimes to like hack around different solutions without buying a product. So you need to understand what are people doing today to kind of like try to find a solution to fix that problem that they have, right? So you look at the data if you have, but I think building the story, like that milkshake story, that you're able to qualitatively tell that is actually more important than sometimes than the data, because I think early stage you don't have a lot of data, so you really need to understand the contextual richness of why people are using your product and how to use it. And then obviously empathy is very important. So you should experience that product firsthand. Ideally, if you can resonate with your target customer, sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. But the more you do, the more you put yourself in the shoes of theirs to understand it, the better. Getting early feedback. This does not mean you need to code a product, get an MVP ready to get feedback. I really like the approach of using very, just high fidelity or even low fidelity mock-ups to get people's reaction without convicting the code. So the approach you go about later on, I touched it a little bit more in our call, is that assuming you're able to build this product, here's how how it will look. And then do a usability study around it to, like a clickable prototype in front of the user and say, hey, tell me what you see on the screen. How would you use it? What question do you have? Those are the cheapest and earliest way to get feedback without having to commit to building something, right? And then obviously looking at the macro environment, when COVID hit, a lot of things change, right? And then now we're potentially heading into a very challenging macro situation. What are some shifting behaviors and preferences? So being attuned to some of that. I think some of the things that I like to conclude this section by saying that a lot of times it's about your conviction of that you're solving the right problem, or whether you're operating too much in the solution space where you're falling in love with your idea without knowing what exactly you're solving for. It's very important to prioritize your needs in the form of, are you a painkiller or you're a vitamin, which is a nice to have product, or you're a candy, which is more delightful. They're all solving different problem, different importance of the problem. It will really hinge on how people are willing to pay, depending on the needs that you're solving. I'm going to fast forward a couple of slides to introduce a framework that I really like from the Lean Product Playbook. I had the opportunity to read it twice and also interview actually Dan Osen myself a couple months ago during my PM Learning series.
Awesome.
I really like this framework that he had, which is about how to prioritize the needs. Because a lot of times I think people are solving problems that either the user needs are not very important, like they're not willing to pay for it, or they have good enough of a current solution, let's say using Google Sheet or Excel, right? It's convenient enough that they're not willing to set up this, this fancy to-do list or something like that. So I think a lot of times that people are solving problems that are important, and then users are satisfied enough with their current solution. A lot of times, sometimes you want to go into a very competitive market too. Then you failed to answer that second question, right? How do we win? You are not creating differentiated enough solution. So that it's really important to map out all your ideas and all where competitors and any duct tape solution, where do they stand? And then you need to either narrow in to find a niche that's important enough for the customer, such that you move to this opportunity quadrant. I think it's really important. Let me show you an example also from Dan, and I'll come back to some of this slide. So for example, let me just introduce one more concept that I also really like from him. This is to answer the question of how do you build a winning MVP, right? A lot of times people think of MVP people don't have a clear distinction between performance and performance attribute and must-haves. So let me just explain what this is. Must-haves are, you need to have the basic in order to even have your flow. So for example, if you're an e-commerce site, you need to have shopping basket, you need to be able to check out, you need to be able to collect payment. So those are must-haves. Even if you have all of it and the needs are fully met, the users are not going to be more satisfied because they take it for granted. And then a performance benefit is the more that you have, the better, right? So in an e-commerce space, for example, if you have more variety of products, then that's better. If you are able to have like 1 day shipment, right? Like that would be potentially a performance or even a delighter that you feel like, whoa, I never thought that I would get it so fast. Or another performance benefit for an e-commerce site could be you have something, different assortment, different variety of stuff. It's convenient. You have a very, a robust customer service center, right? Like people can ask you questions. And then what will be a delight is that people didn't expect it, but having it is like a icing on the cake that you feel like, whoa, it's kind of surprised me. A good example is every time when you finish Slack, for example, like if you finish all your threads, there's this ta-da, like this celebration symbol at the end of to like celebrate you. Or when you finish Duolingo lessons, for example, the owls would jump out and say, oh, congratulations. So those are like little icing on the cake, like lighter feature. So when you combine both framework, the 2x2 quadrant and the camel model, then you come to use Uber as an example, right? Compared it to car services like, cab and taxis. You can then lay out, what are some of the must-haves, some of the performance benefit, and the delighter. And you will also know where they sit in for some of those needs in the 2x2 quadrant. So must-haves obviously take me where I want to go from point A to point B. That's like just the basic, right? Every other service would be able to do. And then what are some dimensions of things that people care when it comes to cab? Hey, you want speed, like faster, right? Be on time. You want to be not spending so much money, saving money. Having a nice experience, which is nice to have, but you at least feel safe, right? Like that's almost like a must-have to some extent. So then you can then benchmark where you sit against your competitor. And then some of the delighters is like people might not expect, but you have them. So being able to book without having to call the cab waiting, you can see where the car is. You're able to charge directly from your phone without having to, pick out your pocket, find the change, or use your credit card in the car. Like that delays, the speed of the ride. Obviously, this was a couple years ago, but you compare, Uber back then with the cab and the car services. I think it's very important that everyone should do an exercise like this to compare your product against customers' needs and make sure those are also prioritized, knowing like which one of these factors are most important, and then map them to the must-haves, the performance, and the delighters, and then put your competitor in your product and kind of like score where you stand. I think this is a very, very important framework that I love to use. Now, next slide is another framework that I also really like. We are running a little short on time, so I'm gonna jump straight to some of this and offer you some additional resources that you can read, after this talk. So Marty Kagan, and who's sort of considered as one of the godfathers for product management in Silicon Valley, and Teresa Torrens, who wrote a book about continuous discovery habits. They mention about this notion of doing an assumption testing. I think it's a very, very cheap and effective way to build effective product market fit. So most of the product fail because of this 4 reasons. I would actually like to break up usability into two risks: discoverability and usability within product. So there's 5 risks, in my opinion. And I do not think you need to prototype the entire idea, nor do you need to wait until A/B test stage where you have a full-fledged product like an MVP to do any of this test. I like the team to conduct a pre-modern analysis, meaning, let's say we have this product today, even though we don't. And then you list out all the assumptions that you would have around this area, this 4 area. And then you need to figure out how can you test them as cheaply as you want in as little time as you want. I'm talking about a day or two, no more than a week. How can you validate as many of those so that you can rapidly iterate versus waiting for a couple of weeks? Okay, this prototype gets designed, or waiting for a couple of months before you ship the code, right? So some of the ideas are very high level, very quickly. Value. Are you solving the right problem? That's the first question, right? Like, what's the job to be done? Like, is it important enough a job that people are willing to not use what they're using today and care enough to use you? The second risk I like to add is discoverability. A lot of times we take it for granted when we build product, people will come and use it. Why? That's a big assumption. Why would people think about you when they have a problem? A lot of products, struggle with that, even for mature, established product, right? Like, especially for product like one product that does really well is Airbnb. You do not have a need to travel all the time, so it's not a frequent usage product. But every time you travel, now you remember Airbnb. It's very important how they were able to do that. It's very remarkable. And the third aspect is usability. Is once people come to your product, do they know how to navigate a product? Do they not abandon in the funnel? Like, do they continue through such that they experience the aha moment? What would it take? How intuitive does the product needs to be? And then feasibility and viability are more like internal facing, right? Can you actually build it within the reasonable amount of time? You're not dreaming high. Like, this is important for a lot of AI product because you assume AI is so fancy, you want to create all this insight, but you need to make sure first what type of insight is most useful for for your user. And then so that you can build a fake, mock-up dashboard and say, hey, if we can provide you this insight, would you use it? Let's say they say yes, which is a hard one, right? I think a lot of people fail at this step already. And then the next is like, is your data good enough to actually support that? Which is a big assumption to make because in AI, a lot of stuff a black box, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So viability is how can you do it in a profitable way? So if you come back to the 3 Venn diagram that we show at the beginning, what is true product market fit? All of that needs to check. So we don't have a lot of time, but I used to like, using this analysis that Teresa Torin does in her book. I encourage people to check it out. It's called The Continuous Discovery Habit. But basically, she used an example of a streaming platform like Hulu or Netflix. If they want to do live sport, how can they very quickly validate if that's a good idea or not? You have the team does this exercise where you lay out all the assumption around the 4 or 5 risks, right? Like, do they want to watch sports? That's the start. Is that the value? Do they actually able to find your platform and think about your platform when they watch sports? And then do you actually have the option that people want to watch, right? The availability of your sports. And then they actually wanted to watch and come back. And you can do it in a sustainable way. I'm going to fast forward to some of this and then jumping on to, yes. So I like to conclude some of this talk with a quote from Teresa. Like I said, product market fit is usually not a big bang binary event that you feel like you just, hit it. I think it is actually a healthy sense of doubt where you are building up increasing confidence, but you never lose the sense of some sort of healthy doubts of like, okay, is this working? Are we doing the right thing? You need to find that right balance such that you can build up your confidence, but still, questioning, staying abreast of the market trend. So I like to conclude by saying wisdom is the balance between having confidence in what you know and doubting what you know. It's a very nuanced balance. All
Awesome.
right.
Yeah, Shivi, that was amazing, and I love that Kano framework. And when you mentioned Airbnb, I also love Airbnb. Like I'm a huge Airbnb fan, so I was thinking through that, right? Like just kind of the basics. Yeah, I need to book a place, but then you look at performance, and it's like, okay, it's cheaper, it's faster. Like I can do self check-in, and then there's delighters, right? Like you have experiences, and every place is different, right? So I just love that experience, and I don't think I'm alone in saying that. I think that's why the platform has been so successful. So this was amazing. We've had a ton of questions come in, and thank you everybody who submitted those questions. I know we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but we'll try to pick some of them. So I've curated some of them. So one question from Harsha is, how do we know we're losing product market fit once we have it? I guess like when do we know it's not fitting anymore? Are there any kind of hints, indicators, that sort of thing?
Yeah, let me see if I'm able to find one slide that I skip over. Yeah, here. So let's just say first, how do you find it, right? Like let's let's align on that baseline, and then we can check. So depending on the stage, I think Hasha's question is more leaning towards the post-launch phase. But at the let me just show. Oh, whoops, this is way too big. Okay, let me do this.
We can see it. We can make it out.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So pre-market, before you launch the product, obviously you're seeing very clear assignment. Most important is that not just excitement, because excitement could be a vanity metric. You feel good about it, but do people actually willing to pay? So if you have any sort of pre-sale, sign up, it's a good indicator. So those are pre-launch. Now post-launch, very important. I think these are a couple indicators. First, looking at your retention curve, right? Those are, Harsha, you might get like flattened retention curve, but then it goes down. Then that's sad. You're not smiling anymore. This is called the smile curve. Like ideally, your retention curve should go up or stay flat. And in a reasonable, percentage for the cohort. You need to match with your industry standard. Like, is it 20%, 10%? What is it? Versus if it continues to go down, that means you're losing product market fit. People are not coming back. The second survey, I find it fascinating. I haven't really done it, but I heard it a lot. Superhuman used this framework to continue to evaluate their product market fit. They survey their user base, and then it's on a 5-point scale, right? So, meaning if you no longer can use this product, how would you feel? Very satisfied, neutral, disappointed, very disappointed. If you have 40% of the user base, of the survey user base, answer they're very disappointed, then you have found product market fit. I personally have not tested, but I've heard, companies that use it. So I encourage you to try. And obviously, some other stuff are looking at, can you viably grow? Like, are you spending too much money acquiring customer than how much they spend on you? So that's the viability aspect. And then just looking at organic growth, right? How much of the growth are coming from paid acquisition channel? How effective are those channel versus organically? People are excited about it. They're sharing about it. People are coming in, not necessarily from pay channel. So being able to have that sort of cost efficiency in mind is going to be really helpful for evaluating whether you have found or continue to sustain product market fit.
Okay. Yeah, that was awesome. And in fact, we had another question that asked exactly what you just said. It's like, how do you measure your product market fit? So I think that answers that question as well. So that's great. We have a question from Rahman. So is product market fit a sequential process, or you just bump into it by, you keep iterating, and how long before you kind of, investors would pull off? Like,
yeah, so I like to think of like product market fit could be something that's you continue to build up. So you do need to show some early success. I know some of the early slides that I show, Lanny's research, it took some of the companies like Substack 5 years, but they were getting investment all along. So I think what you need to think about is that I know this slide that I took from the internet is like, oh, this long process before you find. I actually think that there are smaller things you can do, like that quick iteration cycle. I think the key to keeping investor is that you need to be able to show what you learn in early success, right? And that could mean a very niche feature, one killer feature that you launch, targeted a niche segment that works really well. Maybe that didn't take that long, right? Like that wouldn't take that long. Or like for Lyft and Uber, they were immediate because they win one city. You figure out how to do that one city, right? Even Airbnb in its early days, it was New York City, during events, and they were having air mattresses, but you are showing, like, you're proving what you're learning, right? You lay out all your assumptions that we tested here in this exercise, right? Like this exercise. So you lay out all your assumption, you quickly validate which one works, which one's not, and then where you need to narrow in to zero on. And then you continue to learn. So I would say it's not a linear process for sure. But I would, if someone tells me, hey, I need 5 years to get a product market fit, I'll be like, how can you give me some wins in 6 months? That's how you should be thinking about it. And then you put yourself in the right mindset. You'll do whatever it takes, scrappy. That doesn't mean building more feature. That means how to narrow in, how to have a clear eviction to answer these 3 questions. And then you then continue to expand, right? Like your target can then expand until you get to a reasonable phase where it's financially sustainable, like it gets the traction, you continue to win. So simplify, focused is what I would say at the early stage of finding product market fit.
Okay, we have time for just one last question. And I think this is a really interesting one because whenever we think of product market fit, we think of something that is net new. So Sarah asks, let me post this up. So she asked, I'd love to know if there's a need to evaluate a product market fit for a product that is already being used for years, right? Like a credit card, for example. So what should be our focus for launching a competitive product in a mature industry?
Yeah. I don't have a slide for that, so maybe I just closed the sharing. I think that's a great question. For me, the way how I think about it, let's just use credit card for an example. A lot of times, once you find an initial product market fit, the next phase is thinking about expansion. There's a 2x2 framework that have, I think, market share and growth in another spectrum. So basically, you either penetrate an existing market, having more people in your target segment use that product, or you expanding it to additional markets, like for example, if Africa or Pakistan, maybe certain type of credit card is not yet adopted, then getting more people to use it, level up the security in a credit card, right? I would assume, or the credit limit, making it more flexible, using it on your phone, like it doesn't even require a card, that kind of technology. So you continue to expand that market or diversifying it to work on adjacent market. So finding product market fit for mature product, I think a lot comes in, what is the next adjacent market? Is it the same product and then adapted to other geographic market? Or is it, let's say, credit card for kids, for example? Maybe they are not using it today because their parents are not comfortable giving them a credit card. But do they have a need to use it? Maybe, like I like to get my little monthly allowance when I was a kid, right? And what would it take for that to work? How would you fight fraud? How would you fight abuse if a kid like spends like huge amount of money on the parents' behalf? How do they keep the car, right? Because kids runs around, they get their hands dirty, they lost things all the time. So how do you solve that needs? How would you validate that's the right need that the parents would be paying for? Right? Maybe not kids, maybe teenagers, right? Like what is the kids have many spectrum. There's like, kids that are 6, 10-year-old, maybe they don't know how to use a credit card. What about teenagers, preteens, 12 to 13? Is that big enough a segment to solve? So I think you see how like once you identify a new segment that's not yet tapped into, how that framework comes back again, right? Like what problem you're trying to solve for the kids? Who is the buyer? the parents, are they willing to pay for it? What problem do they solve? Or are they satisfied in that? Are they already satisfied with what they're doing now? Maybe giving them $5 cash a day or a week, and just like, okay, you figure it out. What else? What value add can you add? Maybe it's teaching them the concept of saving. Maybe it's teaching them the concept of credit, right? Like, is that the value add maybe you can bring that would make you to the opportunity quadrant? So those are some of the ways I think you can think of.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So I think we're at time. Shyvee, on behalf of the Product Soch team and the product community, we all want to thank you so much for these amazing insights. It was great having you, and we'd love to have you again in the near future, perhaps on a different topic. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Hope everyone enjoyed the talk as well.
Awesome.
And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you have more questions.
Definitely. Thank you. And before we all leave, just like to take this opportunity to make two quick announcements. So don't miss next week's session where we'll have Ali Ayaz. He's a senior PM growth at Kalo. A very interesting product that provides personalized meal plans through nutritional algorithms. It's the first time I've heard about that, so I'm excited for that. We've also added another episode to our podcast where we had Zaki Shaheen. He's previously a software engineer at Meta, and we love our engineering brothers and sisters. So he's talked through product management from an engineering perspective. So search for Sochcast either in YouTube, Google Podcast, or Spotify. And yeah, see you guys in the next one. Thank you again, Shyvee, and to all of you for joining us. Have a great one.
Thank you. Thank you.